Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk Podcast. I'm Bryan Hornung, joined by my co-hosts, Randy Bryan and Reginald Andre. What's up, guys? How are you?
Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, happy Tuesday. Happy post-holiday weekend.
Yeah, could be a big week next week on the show when we find out what happened over the weekend. This week.
Yep.
So this week, guys, we're seeing another brutal wave of ransomware attack strikes across all the sectors: hospitals, schools, telecom, even emergency services like 911 were knocked offline, proving once again that no one is safe from cyber criminals. And we're not going to talk about it in the show today, but as I was researching the show this morning, I was seeing some interesting articles out there that were talking about just how bad ransomware is, the rise of ransomware, how devastating it is, and how ever increasing it is. And it's interesting because I kind of said it. Like I've been saying it for a while. Like, this stuff isn't slowing down. People tend to kind of latch onto these weak ass data points that come out here and there, and don't really understand the reasons behind maybe why some data point shows that we might be getting ahead of this, or things might be improving when it comes to cybersecurity. I try to come on here and warn people, and Randy and Andre, we try to warn people that it's not getting any better. And as much as we look at AI, and AI playing a role here in businesses, there's two things going on here. Companies are spending a lot of money on AI, which means they're not going to spend it on cybersecurity. And then you also have AI helping cyber criminals out. So it's a perfect storm that's a brewing here.
Fixing to get a lot worse.
Yeah, where it's just, unfortunately, it's one of those things where I look at it where as humanity, it's going to be one of those things that is occurring over here while we're paying attention to AI over here, right? And it's going to be one of those things that I hope, we don't lose sight of it so bad that it is the reason that it is that, proverbial devastating cyber attack that brings down, a country or a major system and causes widespread devastation. So we hope we don't ever end up there, but I got to tell you, it's a real risk. And we're going to dive into what the hell's going on in the world today. And this is just in the last week where we have a system-wide outage at Kettering Health, one of the largest health providers in the United States. We're going to dive into that. A ransomware hit on MathWorks, the makers of MATLAB, which is a major software application used in the education sector and other areas. Morgan County 911 system has gone dark. We're going to talk about what's happening in Morgan County. A breach that rocked Oregon's Central Point School District. Cellcom's voice and SMS services were disrupted across Wisconsin. There's another supply chain attack against co-op supermarkets, and they've become a big target. This one linked to a group called Scattered Spider, and the use of a Windows zero-day exploit in recent ransomware attacks, plus a lawsuit from San Francisco Jazz, or SF Jazz, after their ransomware incident. We'll get into that in the following up segment. So we got a lot to break down today, guys. Let's get right into it.
If people are here to watch, where do they go to pay for the show, Bryan?
They don't go anywhere to pay for the show, Randy, because we don't charge for this show. And we also don't annoy people with annoying ads throughout the show. We just give you the goods, And in a return for that, Randy, what do we ask for?
We ask that you like, share, and comment. Help the algorithm.
Help the algorithm, share us out, help us grow the show. And we
Thanks, everybody.
So here we go. HIPAA Journal says Kettering Health was crippled by a ransomware attack, guys. And a ransomware attack has shut down systems across Kettering Health, which is a 14-hospital network in Ohio. Electronic health records, appointments, and patient care operations have been severely disrupted. Internal systems remain offline days later. So, guys, when a 14-hospital system is knocked offline, the implications are life and death, as we know. Are we doing enough in the healthcare sector to defend from these attacks? Why do we keep saying it?
Definitely not doing enough. Every week we do this podcast. We're always talking about some type of government entity or healthcare that is being compromised. And this is not just, any compromise. This is patients' information. This is people going in, giving out sensitive information, vulnerable information. And now, in addition to dealing with whatever health issues they're having to deal with, they're now having to take time to do identity theft monitoring and, worrying about people using their name and credit and so forth like that.
Yeah, you already mentioned it in the early part of the show, Bryan, but the whole rise of AI with what we know, doing these investigations every single week, we know that this is a sector that's underprotected, generally speaking. Not saying that these guys were or weren't, but it's generally underprotected. And with the rise of AI, and the AI falling into the hands of the bad people, Chat GPT or bad GPT, whatever you want to call it, these kind of attacks are going to get worse and worse.
Oops, had myself on mute there. Apologize. Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know how they're getting into Kettering in this case, but we'll learn more. With hospitals, we usually see it's either a phishing attack or some kind of vulnerable system left out on the edge of the network. There's been a lot of hospitals hit with these Move It file transfer system breaches that have been going on lately. It could be that, or it could be just poor cyber hygiene, phishing attack or compromised credentials that were on the dark web, or a cyber criminal was able to social engineer away from an employee at some point. So, Andre, go ahead.
Well, I did.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
Ray. No, I did want to just mention one thing. I don't know if this was what you're going to say, Randy, but so this happened on May 20th, so last week, and I will like to give kudos to them where they actually issued a warning about scam calls. So I think last week is when we talked about some companies not giving notice about them being attacked and their data out for months or even years, where here you have two things. A, the bad guys are actually already doing scam calls, and B, this hospital is warning their patients, hey, be on the lookout for these scam calls. So I do want to give kudos to that, because typically we see that it's like mouth shut, mouth sealed, and they're not telling any of their clients or patients.
Yeah, and that's huge, right? And I'd just like to point out that you're in my opinion, you're saying this because as part of an organization's response, that needs to be a priority for them. That the ability for them to communicate these kinds of things that Andre's pointing out, usually we're not seeing it. So, you try to look for a silver lining with this type of stuff. I guess that's kind of a silver lining, is that they're getting the word out appropriately, which I've been calling out a lot lately, where when we see this type lit kind of, we're not going to release too much information, tell you much. It makes it really hard for everybody to kind of move along without those systems. But when you communicate clearly, you let people know what's going on, and you manage the response and the crisis appropriately, it makes it a lot more manageable. And I think that's the point there. And a lot of companies lately have been getting that wrong. So MathWorks, guys, MATLAB maker, hit by ransomware again in the last little while. Millions of users worldwide could be affected after MathWorks confirmed a ransomware attack. And while their internal systems were hit, there's fear about intellectual property and user data exposure. Sounds a lot like that recent education system that was hit. And MathWorks, if you don't know, powers everything from academia to aerospace. And when companies like this are hit, how worried should they or we be about the source code theft or state-sponsored targeting in this case? Randy, do you feel like this is a criminal smash and grab or something more strategic?
I mean, the answer to that is I don't know, but that's one thing I was really reading up on over the last several days is the uptick in nation state sponsored attacks on USA infrastructure. And I know this is in the UK, I believe. I'm not sure though. But short story long, I don't know the answer to that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
And then when you're talking about things like this, guys, how do you, I guess this leads to third-party stuff, right? This is what we talk about with these third-party type breaches. This would be, if I was using MATLAB, I potentially am now a victim of this breach through a third party, right? So how do you, if I'm an organization that uses this or any application that's critical or a big piece of my business where I'm pumping a lot of sensitive information, a la AI, into it, how do you reassure these clients that it's okay to use these kind of cloud-based vendors where you're pumping information into their systems, right? That data flow is going from your environment to that cloud system, whether that be a social media website, your own database that lives in AWS or Azure, or an AI system or something like this, MATLAB, that was clearly cloud-based. How do you advise clients on this stuff? What do you say to them? How do they mitigate or manage this risk? We talked about it last week a little bit about requiring third-party audits and SOC 2 stuff. So I don't want to hammer that home again, but is that the answer? You just continue to make sure. I'm sure MATLAB MathWorks has a SOC 2 type 2, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I tell people all the time, this is my advice. Just because they have a SOC 2 type 2 and they're compliant with it doesn't mean they're secure, right? They could still breach. And that's the misnomer where a lot of businesses are tossing around. I mentioned it when we talked about it last week. They toss around these SOC 2 certifications and these different types of certifications, not really knowing what they mean. It's kind of like, oh, we got SOC 2 type 2, high five. Or, hey, we're working with this cloud vendor and they have SOC 2 type 2, like high five, check a box, like great. They can still have a breach and you have to fully be aware of that, right? So my advice would be careful what you put in here, right? Be careful what you put in any tool, right? And always evaluate the data you're pumping into it and always try to do it with least privilege, right? Or least amount of information you need to give it to get the output you need, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Randy, you see all these AI tools, right? And they connect it. Literally, you can take ChatGTP, you can connect it into your Google Drive or your OneDrive, and then it'll read all those files and have access to all those files, right? Let's say you have one folder of data, right? That has all your Excel spreadsheets, that has all this financial data, and that's all you really care about, right? But you also have 90 other folders with a million other documents in them, contracts, stuff like that. And you decide, hey, it'd be really cool if OneDrive could access that data and spin it this way and tell us that way, but you give it access to the whole entire OneDrive, right? Does it really need access to your whole entire OneDrive, or does it really only need access to that one folder, right? So this is what I'm saying. Like, you have to look at this stuff and stop opening up everything to everybody and segment it out and only give it. But that's not what we're doing. And that's why I'm pointing it out, because we're just giving access to everything. And we're not thinking about these granular permissions that we should be giving our data. Andre kind of mentioned it when you talked about, these electronic medical record systems. Like, why does the name and the information have to be in the system? Why can't it be just a number that you cross-reference somewhere else in a separate system, right? Not a bad idea, but that's an idea of segmentation, right? That's, if you segment that, you can really prevent, bad things from happening, right? And I think we've reached a point in history and in time and humanity where we need to start thinking about this stuff in this way.
Scrub and anonymize. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, it's just like when the internet rolled out, Brian. It was all about land grab. Get as much use as you possibly can. All the consequences be danged, if you will. And it's the same way right now with AI. They're just trying to get as many customers, as many people. Cybersecurity 101. It's
not really just AI, though. It's everything.
Well, it is.
This isn't AI.
Cybersecurity 101, day one, zero trust, right? That's literally what you're saying. You only give access to what you need access to, the people that need access to it. You don't just open up everything and give it all away. And, you talked about segmentation. That's based off of that. With AI, they're just not doing that. I don't even think there's a way in ChatGPT right now when you give access to your OneDrive. I think you just give it access to your whole OneDrive. I don't think there's a way to just say certain folders or whatever. Makes me think, okay, I'll just fire up a Google Drive and only put in there what I want ChatGPT to have access to, since it gets access to everything when you give it to OneDrive. But it's a really big issue right now. It's a power grab, land grab, whatever you want to call it. We're just trying to grow at all expenses.
It's an information grab, is what it is. I mean,
yes,
like people have to start wrapping I think our kids have already they're already on that path of wrapping their head around digital life really becoming reality. Like, and Randy, you're saying it, like, there's no more land to grab, right? But we can, just like there's no more gold to get, right? But we created Bitcoin, right? These things, these video games and the way they've been rolled out the last 15 years, Bitcoin is just another example of this whole, you're trained almost as a human being to like accept this as part of your life. And buying things in the digital world is going to be a thing, like buying real estate. And it's not necessarily real estate. Like, people tried that with like, let's make meta worlds and have people have like blocks of area that they can own. Well, it's not going to work like that. The real estate is going to be information. That is what it's going to be. And whoever can compile and be the smartest kind of AI out there that people gravitate to is going to win. It's going to be the next Google, right? It could be Google, or it could be OpenAI, or it could be Anthropic, or some other thing we've never heard of yet that hasn't been invented yet, right? Because quite frankly, when Ask Jeeves was around and Yahoo Search was around, Google wasn't around, right? So, the real AI, the winner, may not be out there yet, right? So this is all stuff that has to play out. But at the end of the day, these are all things that, these land grabs, we're not thinking about things in terms of security and segmentation. Nope. And Copilot's built the same way for M365. You buy it, you get a license for M365 Copilot. It has access to everything, your emails, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, anything that you stick in M365, this tool has access to, right? And that's how they built them. They built them to give it everything because that's what it wants. It wants as much information as it can possibly get, because as Randy said, we don't realize it, but this is an information race. That we're under right now. It's not a land grab race, it's an information race. But you can think of it as a land grab race because it's very much the same thing. Thoughts?
It's just an important time. I know Andre wants to say something, but it's just an important time for us as cybersecurity professionals to lean into the whole AI thing, because our voice is really needed right now as AI gets adopted.
Yep. All right, Randy. Andre doesn't have anything to
No,
say.
I'm
I
good.
like this. Go ahead. You good?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
So I like this article. This is an interesting website. Almost feels like dark webbish. Anyway, 911 goes down in Morgan County, guys. A ransomware attack has disabled 911 and record systems in Morgan County, Indiana. Dispatchers had to revert to paper, and police couldn't access arrest records or court orders for days. Usually we don't see 911 systems impacted, but we do in this case. And people are saying it's terrifying. Imagine calling 911 and the dispatcher is using a clipboard instead of a computer.
Mm-hmm.
What's the backup plan when emergency services are down? Randy, poor planning, or is this just an inevitable risk that we're going to have to face here in America?
So I don't know the answer exactly, but just like the hospital thing, Andre mentioned it already. We're seeing governments grossly underprepared for this, especially city, county, local, grossly underprepared for this. So we don't have any idea, what they were doing. Well, we probably do, but we don't know exactly what they were doing or not doing. But based on our research, week after week after week, they probably weren't doing a whole lot.
No. Go ahead. And that's why they get hit.
Yeah, and even outside of the IT side, I remember one time in South Florida, one of the city's 911 system went down, and it transferred to it automatically transferred to the county for overflow, to take over. And I'm sure the county has a deal with the cities to say, hey, if this region is down, we're going to send it over there. So not even thinking about the technology. Well, although that is technology, it's some type of VoIP system or telephone system, but it's a very concerning thing.
It is. So we will see what happens here. We'll keep everyone updated on what's happening here in Indiana. I'm just curious to know how close that place is to Indianapolis, because that 500 race was this weekend. So Central Point School District out in Oregon, guys. A cyber siege is underway there in Central Point School District. Staff cannot access email or student records, and families have been warned of data exposure. As always, we talk about on the show, schools are a majorly soft target here in the U.S. for cyber criminals. But the impact on student and teachers is huge. As we know, their information is spilling over in the dark web, being used in various and a lot of times nefarious ways. And are we doing enough to secure education systems, especially with kids, personal data being at risk here, guys? My answer is obviously no. We are clearly not doing enough, but I don't really know what the answers are for these cash-strapped school districts who, at the end of the day, are kind of under siege from our federal government. And it looks like it's not going to get any better in terms of their budgetary concerns, at least as far as the federal government goes. So, how you guys have any ideas on how schools can improve, or do you just think that maybe, I feel like my personal opinion on this is I'm just looking at my own school district that I live in, and it's one of those things where you talk to them and they say that they think they have great cybersecurity. Now they haven't had a problem, but I can just tell you based on things that my kid has told me on stuff he's able to do on the computers and the Chromebooks at their school that they're not very well secured.
Yeah, it's what we've been saying the next thing in line. So we know it appears medical is underprotected. It appears government's underprotected, and it appears schools are underprotected. I think it's just something we see week in, week out, Bryan. And it's a disturbing trend because in this case, if they get access to data, they can sell that on the dark web, and kids could have whole credit profiles built out, loans taken in their name, defaulted, all this jazz. they go to apply to get a car loan when they're 18 years old and their credit score is,
or they apply to go to college.
yes.
Try to get a college loan and they can't.
Yep.
Andre?
I would say they start with a cybersecurity risk assessment. That's the biggest thing. Give it a budget where a third party can come in and go through everything and pinpoint, hey, what happens if this happens, and
So-
how would your teachers respond and so forth.
It's interesting, right? Because you kind of said something there. It's made my brain kind of kick in and say, well, look, we have these rules in other places with FTC safeguards. We're seeing it with potentially, expanded HIPAA rules that are coming, where these organizations have to report their cybersecurity to an entity, right? In the case of FTC or GLBA, you have to report that to your board. So we're talking about a school district here that I think every school district in the United States reports to a school board, right? That is usually duly elected by their constituents that they serve. So would you be in favor of a school board needing to get at least an annual cybersecurity readout at one of their board meetings so the public can be informed of that school's cybersecurity posture?
Yeah, as long as we're not giving out, too much information to say this is exposed. Yeah,
you could do that in a way where it's just like, look, we just got assessed. We met the criteria, and they said you pass, right? So it's a pass or fail.
Like a financial audit, same concept. You're not putting bank account numbers in there, but yeah.
I mean, no, auditor, just like a SOC 2, an auditor would give an assessment of yes, they meet, and I feel like they're doing what they're supposed to, or no, they don't.
I'm just laughing, Bryan, because whenever we almost without fail, whenever we go in and do a cybersecurity risk assessment, usually we can do whatever we want, and usually it's with impunity. Like, even in people that supposedly have like full stack cybersecurity, blah, blah, blah. So what you're saying would be huge if a school district would adopt some sort of third party, if they have an IT guy or an IT outsourced or both, combination of, still hire a third party firm to do a risk assessment. It's worth the money. It's worth the money to find out.
Yes, 100%. So we got to figure out something there because, there's a lot of superintendents running around America who are saying that their cybersecurity is good, but every week there's at least one school that gets hit, if not more, every single week for the last 3 years. I mean, it's mind-boggling if people really understood this. Go back and watch every episode of our podcast, and you'll see that that's the case. So moving up north of the border here, guys, I just felt like this was an interesting one to kind of cover because it could happen here. But Nova Scotia citizens told to watch out for scams following ransomware attack on energy supplier. Where did I pull that one out?
Yeah,
that's not supposed to be the arc. I don't know where I got that one from. I apologize. We were supposed to be talking about something else right now, which is the Wisconsin telecom provider who got hit with ransomware. So give me one second.
If you're
give me 1 second. If you want to hit on this one, I don't know what I'm talking about there. So,
well, I can just tell you from the title, they got a ransomware attack. Citizens' data was leaked, and now it's in the hands of the bad guys. So watch out for scams.
Yes,
you're going to get emails and calls that know about you, and they're going to be tailored for you.
Yes, had the wrong link there in my articles, in my documents there. So. Here we go. Here's the right article. So, Cellcom, a regional telecom provider, guys, in Wisconsin, was hit with ransomware, knocking out voice and SMS services, and customers were urged to switch to Wi-Fi apps in order to communicate. Interesting. I have a friend who will tell you that this is kind of like a test. Like this is like a little test for like what's going to happen in the rest of the country. Right? So hey, our government already uses signals, so maybe that's your So when telecom goes down, the ripple effect is massive, especially for these rural Wisconsin residents. What is the real risk when our infrastructure depends on a few core providers here, guys? Thoughts on this and this kind of rinky-dink cell phone provider who had a problem and it wiped out communication in a pretty, large swath of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people, but geographically.
Well, we talked
Large
about it. We
land
talked
mass.
about it on the show, Brian, that we know that they found evidence of China being in all the major telecoms, the big ones in the U.S. So, this could be something along those same lines. It could be a smash and grab, like you mentioned earlier. Could be nation state. It is one of the downsides of living in a quote unquote free economy. You know what I mean? Where you have startups and businesses and they're handling things that you need every day. And if they get hacked, you lose your service, which sounds like that's what's happening to these guys.
Yes, sir. Andre, you're quiet today.
Oh no, I'm here. I'm just thinking of like what could someone do to have in a way just a backup, So just like if Microsoft Teams goes down in most of your interactions with your company's teams, have a backup WhatsApp group and have everybody's personal cell phone number, so at least you can do at least some type of minimal communication. So if you're in a rural area and Cellcom is your provider, I was just thinking like, okay, so what should I do? And I guess you would just hope that they're not also providing you the data for the internet, and then you would just have to move your operations that way.
Yeah, it's something that our government and the FCC is going to have to look into at the end of the day. Because if you have one provider who provides and they don't have another option, that's a problem, right? It's almost like you have to force a company who might not want to be in a certain area because they don't feel like they're going to make enough money, right? Or doesn't fit their business model. You almost have to force them in there, right? And make them an option. And who knows? Like there could be political reasons that there's only one there, right? Maybe somebody who's really well politically connected got his company, that one contract for that particular area, or and nobody else really can get a foot in because of political connections. Who knows what the real reason is? But that was a big issue with, I know, cable TV for a long time in areas that I lived in, where Comcast was the only option because they were in the back pockets of all the political people who made those decisions, and they wouldn't let Verizon come in and provide cable services, right? So interesting to know the reasons behind that. We don't know on the show, but we'll keep digging, and if we find out, we'll let you know. But if it continues to be a problem, absolutely something I think that Americans are going to have to grapple with, especially in rural areas. So moving right along, guys, just in a follow-up, we got this M&S, and it was a pretty big deal over in the UK. And these co-op stores across the UK were disrupted in a supply chain attack, possibly linked to a group named Scattered Spider. And checkout systems and distribution were delayed as a result. And there's a lot of security people out there who are looking at this situation, guys, and saying that it feels like this could be a glimpse into how cyber criminals are looking to operate in the future, where they're, instead of really targeting businesses, they're looking to cripple economies and supply chains. So are we, as just like as the business collectively, as companies or industries, or just in general as business people, are we underestimating the ability of these cyber criminals?
Yep.
And really underestimating the thin ice that we're skating on when it comes to third party risk? In other words, you see a massive event in the near future. Randy says yes. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying, when the war in Ukraine broke out, We saw attacks on 365 out of Russia. They 4x'd over that first weekend. Out of China, they 10x'd over that first weekend. And we said at our show that week, right after that happened, we said this is a new reality. The new reality is there is a cyber war going on behind the scenes. And, are we going to see like smash and grab criminals try to bring down entire economies? Maybe. Are we going to see nation states? You betcha, for sure.
You betcha. So we got a comment here, guys, and it's a really good one that flows in with the show very nicely. I don't know who Amir is. I don't know if it's the Amir we know. But do we know what operating systems were used where the ransomware attacks happened? Well, we can take a pretty good guess that it was probably a Windows system. I mean, it's just a reality of the numbers. It's nothing against Microsoft. If Apple had, 90% of the market share, we would be having a conversation about Mac OS and not Windows. That is my opinion. You can, Amir says, nah, you won't know me. I'm based in the UK. All right. Well, thanks, Amir. Appreciate it.
Brian, people say Macs are safer, and I'm a Mac user, right? And I say
you are
like being behind a small wall in a war. Okay, there's a giant war raging in a battlefield, bombs and tanks and everything going everywhere. You're over here behind this tiny little wall. Nobody's in their tank going, "Hey, let's blow up that little bitty wall," because there's a giant war going on out here. And you're right. Since they only have 6-8% of the market, I think it's a little higher in the US, but overall, it's like 6% of the market. It's too small of a target. Not that you don't get them at all, but you don't get them as much because it's such a small target.
So speaking of Windows, it's a favorite target of cyber criminals, right? And the Play Ransomware Group is using a Windows 0 day that was released in 2024 to target U.S. organizations, bypassing many endpoint security controls. So this is a 0 day in Windows. It's being actively used in these ransomware attacks currently. What does that say about the evolving threat landscape and what businesses need to do today? Well, Randy gave me a bunch of shit about my patching strategy this morning in the green room. So I'm going to give this question to him. Randy, how does this change your patching strategy, knowing that a 0 day like this exists?
I have been famously quoted as saying that patching is the unsexiest of all the cybersecurity controls. So it is.
That's why we leave it to our RMN to do it for us.
It is something that needs to be done. You ought to be checking to make sure that your patching's being done. And, especially since this is a 0 day that came out in 2024. Has it been patched since then, though? That's my question.
I hope so. I mean, it's patched. I mean,
the release has been put out. Yes.
Yes. So these are unpatched Windows systems that will be falling victim to this.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest issue I see with this article is that you're talking about things from last year, or things that, because typically, 0 day, it's instant. It's like, man, this just happened yesterday. Nobody was prepared for it. But when you're now letting things go on for 6 months, 12 months in your organization, and it's not patched, it's, for me, I wouldn't even call it a 0 day anymore. I was just calling you just not keeping up on your, you're not doing proper cyber hygiene.
Yeah, I agree. So, I was messing around over here on my screen. I got to clear out some screens. So it's interesting, it's one of those things, guys, where I was just thinking as you were talking, Andre, like I don't know why my brain thinks like this sometimes. I'm really not a cyber criminal, but if I'm starting a cyber criminal group, right, and I'm thinking about like how am I going to like exploit companies? Am I going to use social engineering and phishing, or am I going to focus in on trying to exploit 0 days? Like if you were in that position, what would your choice be? Like if you had to choose one, I'm going to go the route of social engineering. I'm going to build a team of guys that send phishing emails and fake messages and get people to click on links and get in their computer that way. or I'm going to build a botnet that scans the world in networks, outside of networks, for vulnerabilities like this, because I think most humans are lazy and they're not patching. What's more advantageous in your mind?
I'm
going
both.
This route.
I'm doing both.
Well, you can't do both. It's Sophie's choice.
Then I would look at my skills versus what's going to bring the most money. Probably I'd go with social engineering, but you're right. And you can also use.
Well, I would go with this because you might find a bug too. You could get a bounty for.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I would just go here. I would go here because I think like there's going to be a point where people are trained up enough on this stuff where the social engineering has a diminishing return. And I just don't see that being the case here with patching. Because we got guys that rely on tools for automated patching and they don't actually have somebody come in and check after the fact. So
so officially we do that.
We have blokes out there who just use tools and automate their patching.
Yeah.
As a cyber criminal, I'm feasting on that all day.
Exactly. So we open up we have tickets. We call them maintenance tickets, and they include all that. I was just giving you crap about the patching guy.
What are you talking about?
This is very important, though, y'all. Bottom line, it is unsexy, but it is the most important, honestly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because you don't want to end up like this San Francisco Jazz, who's trying to figure out what to do after their cybersecurity provider caused them to get a ransomware attack. Yes, I do have an ad blocker turned on. Oh my God. So this isn't the first time we saw this story recently either, guys. We've talked about this a lot on the show in 2025, quite frankly. I think this might be the third or fourth time we've talked about this, where the company has sued their provider, their cybersecurity provider, MSP, after a ransomware attack crippled their systems and canceled performances. And the suit claims negligence and inadequate protections, which we try to, we're on this show week to week, saying to you guys, like, you gotta check this stuff, because you might think you've hired the right MSP or you've hired the right IT person to head up your IT department and they've got you covered. But at the end of the day, we are seeing a wave of litigations after ransomware attacks hitting MSPs, MSSPs, and cybersecurity providers, because they're not living up to what they're saying either in their contracts or in their marketing. And it's giving customers a false sense of security. And then they end up, getting hit with something like this that impacts their business in a significant way. So guys, what are your thoughts here on this? Should MSPs be ultimately responsible for this stuff? I don't know the details of the article. I'm going to go through it as you're talking to try to get more, but what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, when I read this article, I couldn't believe it. But then when I went on this company's website, the Aldrich Technology website, then I started to believe it, because in their services that they have, it's a break fix company. Yeah, they're not. They don't even list the word cyber on there. And when I'm like, how do you get a 4-year, $1 million contract, and you don't even have anything about cybersecurity on your website?
It looks like from the link that they are a CPA firm that also provides this. I don't know, but look at the link. It looks like that. My thoughts were, Bryan, it's funny, the conversation we had just a second ago, it turns out they weren't patching stuff and they weren't putting their quote unquote security software on all of the machines. So they had, a court's going to decide, but if all of that is true, obviously that's the lawyer on the San Francisco Jazz saying that. So there's a link in the article, and maybe it doesn't go to the right place, but the lawyer's saying that if the lawyer's correct, that'll come out in the court. That'll come out during the case or whatever, the trial. That'll be gross negligence. I mean, if you're not patching and you're not putting your software on everything, Obviously, there's got to be communication between both organizations. Somebody just fires up a machine. They shouldn't just be firing up a machine. There ought to be policy about that. I don't want to get off into the weeds. But anyway, yes.
I also like in June 2023, an email included in the court filings, the president of the technology company acknowledged to losing the passwords. In an email, he provided a list of login credentials from other clients. And then he wrote to the Jazz person, please assure me that you will delete these once you have tried them, as some may be used for other clients or individual accounts.
That ought to be a huge red flag.
I mean, I'm just wondering what scenario was going on that even caused somebody to do that. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is rinky-dink IT kind of stuff, but this is stuff we see on a regular basis. I mean, this is, a fairly, probably well-funded organization. I would imagine San Francisco Jazz is probably pretty well-funded. I mean, Philly Jazz is, New York Jazz is. I mean, I would imagine that a major city's jazz ensemble is pretty well-funded for something like that, all things relative. So they have some money to play with. It's not like they're a shoestring kind of nonprofit, right? So at the end of the day, we see this with all kinds of businesses. I've seen this with Fortune 500 companies where they've had similar type of IT, where stuff like that's going on, where nobody thinks about anything in terms of security. And you don't ever think that, we tell clients all the time, you don't want to email that, right? You don't want to send that stuff through email, right? Because they don't understand that, like, somebody gets in that email, they have that information, they can do something with it, they can cause further damage. And some people don't understand that all the time, and that's a big deal that gets missed. And unfortunately, sometimes the people that don't understand that are running your IT, right? And let's not put our heads in the sand on that, because that's what was going on here. So lots of shout outs today. Noah Hawks out of LinkedIn said, hello team. What's up, Noah? Appreciate the support. Amir, appreciate you out in the UK. Luke, you also gave us a shout out again. We did. We had a good Memorial Day weekend here in the US. Pretty crazy stuff going on. So we'll keep everyone updated. Appreciate everyone chiming in, sharing their comments, their thoughts. Remember, share us out, like, subscribe, helps other people find this content, which is relevant and important. Stay safe out there. And Randy and Andre and I will see you guys next week. Take care.
Take care.